Greetings. Here's an update on making Twobees. These are shoes that are about as simple as I can come up with and primarily made for children in areas where there might be parasites in the soil, there might be jiggers that get into the soles of their feet, and so that means it's important to have an impermeable layer on the bottom, and I've been using bike and motorcycle inner tube to service soling, but I've also found that exercise ball works really good too. Looking for other things that are made out of impermeable rubber, like rubber roof lining. That's another one that I've seen. So something thin, rubbery, and flexible is what we're looking for. I've showed a way to stitch the uppers to the sole, and I want to show you another way, and that requires expanding the pattern. You can make these patterns bigger by just adding same distance all the way around the edge. So I've added this 3/16 of an inch to the sole pattern, but you could add 1/4 inch or more if need be. And I've brought the stitch marks out just a little bit further. Then I've cut this upper and the leather sole and the rubbery sole, cut them all out so they're the same size. Actually, it helps if the bottom layer, the rubbery layer, is cut just a little bit bigger so you can see it so it doesn't escape while you're cutting out the 3 layers. If you don't have contact cement to adhere the rubbery part to the leather sole, you can just put the layers together and staple the layers together along the edge so that they won't be moving around as you punch stitch holes. You can either punch holes with a leather punch that you might have, or you can just use a nail, or you can also use the end of a screwdriver that makes slits. That's fine too. And of course you need to have something wood underneath the shoe parts that you're punching the slits in, and also a hammer to hit the screwdriver with, and small screwdrivers like the kind of screwdriver that's used in sewing machines. And now on to stitching. I cut a piece of thread 8 times the length of the shoe to this point, so 8 times to the tip of the toe. So there's 2 ways that you can stitch. You can do a 2 needle running stitch or a 1 needle running stitch. In both cases, I will take that long thread and even out the lengths after I pull it through that first hole here. So now I've got even lengths. And to do the single needle running stitch, I'm going in that next hole, the next slit, and then the one after that. You see there's spaces in between, which we will fill in after we get all the way around the shoe with the other thread. So I'll show you just a little sample of that. Come through here, and then I'm filling in these spaces. So I go all the way around with 1 single needle, and then I come back and fill in all the spaces. A problem might arise when you stitch this way, in that when you take that second thread into the slit or hole, you might be splitting the plies, the pieces of the other thread. If you need to take it out, then that can make it a little more challenging. You have to take the needles off before you do that. You can also stitch using both needles at the same time, and this I demonstrated in the video about stitching with the 2 needle running stitch between your knees. So you can do that with this. What this entails is taking both needles through at the same time and then pulling them through so there's no chance that any thread would be split. So each time you take one needle one direction, the other needle the other direction, and then pull them through. So I'll continue stitching until I get to this point, and then we'll stitch the heel tab. I'm doing one needle at a time, and since I have slits, I'm going to take that first needle and pull it over to the side, and then when I enter that second needle, I'm much more likely to not split the thread that's already in there. Give stitches a good tug each time, whether you're doing one thread at a time or two threads at a time. Each time you make a stitch, pull. You just don't want this top to be loose and slide off. It's got to be really tight. I've stitched all around the shoe and am here. I have a bit of thread left. You might be able to get by with 7 times around instead of 8. So I'm ready to make a knot here. And to do that, I'm going to make a kind of a double square knot. So I'm doing right over left, but I'm going to do it twice. So I wrap that thread twice around my other needle. And now I do left over right, which is always the one that feels more awkward. So there's 1 time and 2 times. So I've made myself a sturdy and very kind of a big knot, which makes it easier if I want to burn it to keep it from ever coming undone. I have my candle lit, so I'll take this knot and put it over the flame and make it really tight. And I'm going to have a chisel handy so that I can mash the knot after it starts melting. So there's my knot in the flame. It looks pretty melty. So I'm going to mash it with this chisel. And I've got a knot that's not going to come undone. And I'm trimming the threads closely near the knot. Now I'm stitching the heel tab. And since the heel tab is made of 2 layers of material, the rubbery material and the leather topsole, or whatever material you're making the upper out of, I am going to be stitching up this way, across here, and then down here where I'll find my final knot. So I take a thread that's about 4 times the distance around this tab, and I've put a needle on both ends, and I'm doing those needles one at a time, so that's kind of a hybrid way to go about it. So I've got my threads even in length, and I'll go in this next slit. I think there's usually 3 slits on the sole part. I'm pulling my thread over to the side, going in that slit, and the third one. Now there's a bit of a gap because I've got stitch slits on that section and also slits on this section where the heel tab is stitched to the upper, but there's no slit here, so there's a bit of a gap. So I'm going to use this last thread from stitching the upper to the sole. So I'm going to take this thread, made an extra slit here, and I'm going to wrap it around that last thread that stitched the upper to the sole, and then I'll take this thread down through that same final thread in stitching the upper to the sole, and now I have these, I believe it's 6 stitches to go. Stitch here, across, and down. I'm now stitching across the top. I made a round hole at this point and at this point, so it makes turning the corners look a little neater than a slit there does. Continue with that hybrid stitch. I'm doing them both at the same time. Each time I take the the thread that's coming in from the back and put it over the one that's already in there, and then I'm pulling to the side. I think it makes a neater line of stitches. Pull this one through also, and then this goes over, and then I pull it to the side and insert, and each time give a nice tug. That's a good thing about doing these two needles at the same time, is that you can tug on them both and make it a little more secure. So go in my little round hole here, and then I'll head down this final side. I've completed stitching around the tab. The last thing to do is to make a knot here, and I'll do the same knot that I did previously, which is right over left, 1, 2, and then left over right, 1, 2, get a nice tight knot. I'm going to cut these ends off close to the knot. Bring my little candle over. Try to get the knot isolated. And now I'm smashing it with the chisel. And don't think that knot will ever come undone, and the little shoe is finished.